Hey, story lovers. What if a single cruel taunt could unravel a web of deceit? Welcome to StoryLoom, where we weave tales of raw courage and justice that grip your soul. This is the story of David Jackson, a mechanic who faced impossible odds. Ready for a twist that'll leave you stunned? Stick with StoryLoom, because this tale's about to expose a truth no one saw coming. The engineer laughed at the black mechanic. If you fix that engine, I'll marry you. That cruel taunt echoed through the company warehouse like a shot fired in the tense silence of that Monday morning. Rebecca Williams, chief engineer at Precision Automotive in Detroit, held her cell phone pointed directly at David Jackson as she repeated the phrase with a venomous smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm recording everything, David. When you fail miserably, I want everyone to see what happens when someone tries to take your place." David was 38 years old and had spent more time under car hoods than Rebecca had spent studying at expensive universities. His calloused hands told stories of engines saved when all the other technicians had given up. His small workshop on the south side of town didn't have state-of-the-art equipment or certifications hanging on the wall. But it had something the precision engineering department could never buy. Pure mechanical genius. The experimental engine on the metal workbench had withstood 3 weeks of technical analysis. 5 engineers with master's degrees had declared the project dead after a catastrophic failure that cost the company $200,000. It was a revolutionary prototype for electric cars with proprietary technology that promised to increase range by 60%. "You have until Friday," Rebecca announced to the small crowd of employees who had gathered to watch the spectacle. 5 days to do what our expert team couldn't do in 3 weeks. And when you fail, I want everyone to understand why some people need to accept their limitations. Can you imagine the fire it takes to face a trap designed to crush you? Keep watching StoryLoom, because David's about to ignite a revolution. The comment had come up during a tense meeting about delays on the production line. Someone had casually mentioned that even David from the repair shop down the street could fix this faster than our department. Rebecca had exploded, her cheeks red with anger behind her professional mask. "Bring in this miracle mechanic," then, she had taunted in a cutting tone. "If he can fix what 5 trained specialists couldn't, I'll personally hand him a $200,000 a year contract." It was a cruel trap, and everyone knew it. David didn't have a college degree. He didn't have access to proprietary technical manuals, and he certainly didn't have the computerized diagnostic equipment that cost more than most people's homes. "Just look at him," Jake, Rebecca's assistant, muttered to his colleagues. "He probably didn't even finish high school, and he wants to compete with real engineers." David didn't show that he had heard the comment, but his dark eyes were fixed on the complex engine with an intensity that made some of those present shift uncomfortably. It was the silent concentration of someone who had faced impossible challenges before and learned to read secrets that others didn't even know existed. "Pathetic," Rebecca whispered loud enough to be heard, filming every second of the planned humiliation. "He doesn't even know where to start." But while everyone else mocked him silently, something in David's eyes suggested a dangerous serenity that didn't match the seemingly desperate situation. It was the calm of someone who holds information that could rewrite the entire narrative of superiority. There, in front of all the contemptuous stares and cameras pointed at him, he stood firm like someone who knows the true weight of the words he had just heard and the price some would pay for their arrogance. If you're hooked on this story of justice and resilience, don't forget to subscribe to StoryLoom to find out how a moment of humiliation turned into the biggest mistake Rebecca Williams ever made in her life. The video of Rebecca's provocation spread through the company's social media like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, the recording had been shared in dozens of internal groups, accompanied by cruel laughter and poisonous comments, dissecting every second of public humiliation. "Someone should tell David that marriage doesn't include medical benefits," wrote Mike from the sales department, followed by a row of crying emojis. "Imagine the look on his face when he finds out he can't even fix a toaster." David found out about the viral video when his teenage daughter Jasmine came home from school with red eyes from crying. "Dad, my classmates are sharing a video of you on TikTok. They're saying horrible things." Sitting in the small living room of the apartment he had shared with his daughter since his wife died in a car accident 5 years ago, David felt a familiar pang of controlled anger rise in his chest. It was the same feeling he had learned to control when the doctors at the public hospital told him there was nothing more they could do for Linda. That maybe things would be different at a private clinic. "Don't listen to those people, Princess," David murmured, hugging his daughter. "Some people only feel important by putting others down." But inside, something was being carefully catalogued and filed away in a dark corner of his mind. Every face that had laughed, every cruel comment, every person who had filmed his humiliation for free entertainment. At Precision Automotive, Rebecca was savoring every moment of her anticipated victory. During Monday's morning meeting, she projected the video onto the conference room screen, eliciting widespread laughter from the executives. Look at the look of confidence on his face, Rebecca sneered, pausing the video at the exact moment David silently nodded to accept the challenge. It's almost touching how some people just can't recognize their own limitations. The company's CEO, Thomas Crawford, a 60-year-old man who had built his automotive empire through decades of hard work, watched the scene with an increasingly uncomfortable expression. Rebecca, don't you think this has gone too far? The man isn't even here to defend himself. That's exactly why it's educational, Rebecca retorted with a sharp smile. How many times are we going to waste time and resources on people who are clearly not qualified to be here? This is a lesson for all of us about maintaining appropriate standards. Jake, the sycophantic assistant, took the opportunity to attack. My cousin is a mechanical engineer with a degree from MIT, and he says that this type of motor is practically impossible to repair without specialized equipment. David probably can't even read the technical diagrams. What none of them knew was that David had spent the last 3 days immersed in something that went far beyond technical diagrams. In his small workshop, surrounded by technical manuals borrowed from the public library and patent printouts he had downloaded for free from the internet, he was discovering something that would make all that laughter stick in their throats. The engine wasn't just broken. It had been deliberately sabotaged. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone without decades of practical experience. But David had learned to read signs that office engineers would never notice. 3 small components had been intentionally damaged to simulate natural failure, but the pattern was too specific to be a coincidence. Someone at Precision Automotive had sabotaged the company's own prototype. Interesting, David muttered to himself, meticulously photographing each piece of evidence with his old cell phone. Very interesting. On Tuesday, Rebecca decided to step up her humiliation campaign. She created a WhatsApp group called Miracle Mechanic Updates and added all of the company's employees, posting sarcastic updates about David's progress. Day 2, our hero is probably still trying to figure out where the start button is, she wrote, followed by dozens of laughs and approving reactions from her colleagues. I bet he's given up and is at the bar, added Carlos from accounting. Or maybe he realized this isn't the place for people like him, commented Sandra from Human Resources. But while the entire company was having fun at his expense, David was having a very interesting conversation with Samuel Torres, a 70-year-old veteran mechanic who had worked at Precision for 40 years before retiring. That kind of sabotage is the signature of someone on the inside, Samuel said, examining the photos David had taken of the engine. I know that pattern. I saw it before about 15 years ago when someone was trying to derail specific projects to favor other contracts. David nodded slowly. You know people who still work there. Samuel smiled, his eyes sparkling with friendly mischief. Son, I know people in places you wouldn't believe, and some of those people are very interested in knowing why prototypes are being sabotaged. On Wednesday, Rebecca was so confident of her victory that she did something that would prove to be the biggest mistake of her career. She called a local radio show and told the whole story live. Describing David as some mechanic who thinks he can compete with real professionals. It's a matter of proper education, she explained to listeners. Some people just need to learn to accept their natural limitations. What Rebecca didn't know was that one of the program's most attentive listeners was Dr. Angela Morrison, a professor of mechanical engineering at the University of Detroit and a consultant specializing in industrial sabotage. Angela had worked on similar cases before, and something in the description of the unrepairable engine had set off alarm bells in her experienced mind. That same afternoon, Angela showed up at David's workshop with an unexpected proposal. Mr. Jackson, my name is Angela Morrison. I heard about your situation on the radio, and I'd really like to take a look at that impossible engine. David watched her carefully. Angela was a black woman in her 50s with the confident posture of someone who had fought to earn respect in predominantly male and white environments. University professor? David asked, among other things. Angela smiled. But today I'm here as someone who recognizes sabotage when she sees it. David slowly opened the door to his workshop, finally allowing someone to see what he had discovered. While Rebecca continued her campaign of humiliation on social media, posting cruel memes and racking up likes from equally prejudiced colleagues, something was crystallizing in the concentrated silence of David's workshop. Every recorded laugh, every poisonous comment, every moment of public contempt was being carefully archived, not only in his memory, but now in concrete evidence that would soon show exactly who was really out of place in this story. Dr. Angela Morrison wasn't just a university professor. For 20 years, she had served as a technical expert for the FBI on cases of industrial sabotage. And what she saw in David's workshop confirmed her darkest suspicions. This isn't just sabotage, Angela murmured, examining the detailed photos David had taken. It's a specific pattern I've seen before. Someone at Precision is selling prototypes to competitors and sabotaging the originals to cover up the theft. Samuel Torres nodded grimly. I've suspected something like this for the last few years I've been with the company. Projects that failed too strangely to be a coincidence. Meanwhile, Rebecca intensified her humiliation campaign with dangerous confidence. She had created a public Facebook event called Wedding of the Century Engineer and Mechanic for Friday, inviting all company employees to witness the historic moment. I've even picked out the dress, she posted on her stories, filming herself laughing hysterically. Something very simple because it's going to be a quick ceremony, like 5 seconds of, I told you this wouldn't work, and that's it. The comments were cruel and abundant. Poor guy, he has no idea what's coming, wrote Jake. Someone should warn him that he can back out now and keep some dignity. David watched silently, capturing screenshots of every post, every comment, every moment of documented cruelty. His daughter, Jasmine, who had learned how to use video editing software at school, was helping him organize all the digital evidence. Dad, look at this, Jasmine said, showing him her phone. She made a video imitating you at work. It already has 15,000 views. In the video, Rebecca had staged a cruel parody, pretending to be a confused mechanic trying to understand a complex engine using an exaggerated voice and exaggerated gestures that clearly satirized racial stereotypes. Perfect, David muttered, saving the video. Keep documenting everything. On Thursday, Angela returned with information that completely changed the game. David, I need to show you something. I got access to Precision's maintenance records for the last 5 years through a contact in the insurance department. The documents revealed a systematic pattern. 8 prototypes had failed in a similar way over the past 3 years, always following the same method of sabotage that David had identified. More importantly, all of the failures had occurred on projects led by black engineers or women. This isn't just about technology, Angela explained. It's about keeping certain people out of leadership positions. When projects fail, these engineers get demoted or fired. Samuel connected the dots. And guess who always took over the projects after the failures? The same group of white engineers who are now laughing at you. David spent that night working on the engine with surgical precision. He wasn't just fixing it. He was meticulously documenting every piece of evidence of sabotage, creating a technical report that would be impossible to refute. Dad, said Jasmine, entering the workshop with a cup of coffee. Are you sure you want to do this? These people are very powerful. David stopped working and looked at his daughter. You know what your mother always said? That the difference between justice and revenge is that justice protects other people from going through what you went through. On Friday morning, Rebecca arrived at the company wearing a bright red blazer and carrying a small professional camera. She had hired a freelance videographer to document the historic moment in high quality. Guys, in 2 hours, we're going to have some real viral content, she announced to her colleagues, the kind of video that teaches lessons about knowing your limits. Jake was ecstatic. I've already set up the WhatsApp group to share it in real time. This will be a meme in minutes. What none of them knew was that David had already arrived. Angela was parked discreetly across the street from the company with professional recording equipment borrowed from the university. Samuel was positioned at the entrance, filming with his cell phone. And David? David stood calmly next to the repaired engine with an almost imperceptible smile, holding a thick envelope that contained much more than anyone at Precision could imagine. Because sometimes, when powerful people completely underestimate those they consider inferior, they forget that true intelligence doesn't need a diploma to rewrite all the rules of the game. At 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, the Precision Automotive warehouse was crowded like never before. Rebecca had gotten what she wanted, an audience of over 100 employees, executives, and even some important customers she had invited to witness an educational moment about professional standards. The hired cameraman was already in position, broadcasting live on the company's social media channels. Rebecca wore a bright red blazer and held a bouquet of plastic flowers she had bought specifically for the charade. Everyone, in a few minutes you're going to witness a valuable lesson about the importance of knowing your limitations, she announced to the camera, smiling with a cruelty that made some employees shift uncomfortably. David Jackson promised to fix an engine that 5 engineers said was impossible to fix. Let's see how that ends. David entered the warehouse carrying a toolbox and walking with a calmness that contrasted dramatically with Rebecca's frenetic energy. Behind him, Angela Morrison entered discreetly, filming everything with professional equipment from the university. Ah, our groom has arrived, Jake shouted, eliciting cruel laughter from the crowd. Where's the suit? You can't marry the engineer in dirty overalls. David positioned himself next to the engine he had spent the last 5 days repairing. With precise movements, he connected the last cables and checked the oil levels. The silence in the warehouse was tense, broken only by the muffled laughter of a few employees. Before we begin, David said, his clear, firm voice echoing through the warehouse. I'd like everyone to see something interesting I discovered during the repair. Rebecca frowned. This wasn't in the humiliation script she had planned. David held up his old cell phone, connecting it to a portable projector Angela had lent him. This engine didn't break by accident. It was deliberately sabotaged. The first image projected onto the wall showed components damaged with surgical precision. Look here. 3 sensors were intentionally broken to simulate natural failure. The pattern is too specific to be a coincidence. A nervous murmur ran through the crowd. Rebecca tried to interrupt. This is ridiculous. You're making excuses for your incompetence. Interesting that you mention incompetence, interrupted Angela, approaching with a thick folder. Dr. Angela Morrison, professor of mechanical engineering and former FBI expert on industrial sabotage. I have analyzed the evidence collected by Mr. Jackson and can confirm this engine was sabotaged following a pattern I have identified in 8 previous cases at this company. The blood drained from Rebecca's face. What? What is going on here? David continued projecting images. Each case of sabotage occurred on projects led by black engineers or women. When the projects failed, these professionals were demoted or fired. Guess who always took over the projects after that? Samuel Torres emerged from the crowd carrying documents. 40 years working at this company has given me access to a lot of information. Rebecca, you and your group have received promotions and bonuses totaling $1.2 million over the past 3 years, always after taking over projects that mysteriously failed. Rebecca was visibly shaking. You can't prove anything. This is defamation. David smiled for the first time in 5 days. I can. Jake, do you remember the video you made imitating me in a racist way? What you didn't know is that my daughter recorded everything and saved it before you could delete it. The projection changed to the cruel video of Rebecca imitating racial stereotypes. Horror-stricken gasps echoed through the warehouse. Important clients began to leave, clearly uncomfortable. And Rebecca, David continued, do you remember all those cruel posts in the WhatsApp group? My daughter printed every single one, including your private messages discussing how to keep certain types of people in their place. The projection exploded into devastating screenshots, messages from Rebecca talking about cleaning the company of undesirable elements and using creative methods to eliminate the competition from diversity. Thomas Crawford, the company's director, had arrived silently and watched with a look of growing horror. Rebecca, in my office. Now. Wait, said David. I'm not finished yet. He turned to the engine and started it. The smooth, perfect roar of the machine filled the shed. It wasn't just working, it worked better than the original. This engine hasn't just been repaired, it's been optimized. I've increased its efficiency by 15% using techniques that anyone with real experience, not just a degree, knows. Rebecca collapsed into a chair, her red blazer now looking like a flag of surrender. Tears of anger and humiliation streamed down her face. David, stammered Jake, we didn't know. It was just a joke. A joke. David stared at him coldly. You tried to destroy my reputation, humiliate my daughter at school, and perpetuate a system that prevents talented people from growing because of the color of their skin. That's not a joke. It's a crime. Angela approached the microphone. The complete documentation of this investigation has already been sent to the Department of Justice, the State Board of Engineers, and the press. Rebecca Williams and Jacob Silva will face criminal charges of sabotage and discrimination. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. Rebecca tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. By the way, said David, calmly, turning off the engine, about that marriage proposal. Thank you, but I'm going to have to decline. I prefer partners who respect me as a human being. As Rebecca was escorted out by company security, completely broken and humiliated in front of everyone she had tried to impress, David stood firm beside the engine he had repaired, not only with his technical skills, but with something much more powerful, dignity, intelligence, and a sense of justice that no diploma could buy. Because sometimes, when privileged people forget that competence has no color, they discover in the most brutal way possible that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. A mistake that not only destroys careers, but rewrites entire stories about who really deserves to be at the top. 6 months after what Precision Automotive employees came to call the Day of Truth, David Jackson sat in his new office overlooking downtown Detroit. The plaque on the door read, David Jackson, Director of Technological Innovation, Precision Automotive. Thomas Crawford had made quick and definitive decisions after the events of that day. Rebecca Williams was fired for cause and faced 3 criminal charges for sabotage, racial discrimination, and conspiracy. Jake Silva was also fired and was working as a used car salesman, trying to pay off his legal debts. The irony, David thought, watching through the window, is that they were always afraid I would take their place. They never imagined I would create something much bigger. The company had offered David not only an executive position, but also full funding for his inclusive innovation department. His first project, a mentoring program that connected experienced mechanics with newly graduated engineers, was already being implemented in 5 states. Angela Morrison now worked as a specialist consultant for the company, investigating and correcting decades of institutionalized discriminatory practices. Her partnership with David had resulted in discoveries that benefited dozens of professionals who had been systematically disadvantaged. "Dad, did you see this?" Jasmine entered the office carrying her tablet. Now 19 and studying engineering at university on a full scholarship funded by the company, she had become a recognized digital activist. Rebecca tried to post on LinkedIn about overcoming personal challenges, but the comments, well, the internet has a memory. David smiled softly. Rebecca had tried to rebuild her professional image, but evidence of her racist behavior continued to circulate on social media. No reputable engineering firm wanted to associate its name with hers. Samuel Torres, now a senior consultant in David's department, walked in carrying reports. Sales of the new optimized engine have exceeded all projections. 3 competing companies have already made offers to license its technology. "And Jake?" David asked. "He tried to sell confidential information from his previous company to a competitor," Samuel replied with a wry smile. "He was caught in the same trap he used to set for others. Now he's facing federal charges of industrial espionage." That afternoon, David received an unexpected phone call. It was from the host of a local radio show where Rebecca had tried to humiliate him months earlier. "Mr. Jackson, we'd like to invite you to talk about your journey and your new automotive industry inclusion program. Many people want to hear your story directly from you." David accepted, not out of revenge, but because he knew his story could inspire others facing similar situations. During the live interview, the host asked, "How do you feel about Rebecca Williams now?" David paused thoughtfully. "I don't feel anger. I feel sorry for her. She wasted years of her life feeding prejudices instead of using her talent to build something meaningful. The real tragedy isn't what she did to me. It's what she did to herself." When he got home that night, Jasmine was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Dad, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. That day in the shed, when everyone was laughing at you, did you really know you were going to prove them all wrong?" David hugged his daughter. "Princess, your mother taught me something important before she died. She said that dignity isn't about never falling down. It's about how you get back up. And sometimes, letting people underestimate you is the biggest advantage you can have." At that moment, his cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a Forbes article, "David Jackson, from neighborhood mechanic to automotive industry revolutionary. How one man turned prejudice into progress." 6 months ago, Rebecca Williams had tried to publicly humiliate him for believing that some people need to know their place. Today, David Jackson was redefining exactly what that place was for talented people in the industry, regardless of their color or background. Rebecca had lost her career, her reputation, and her credibility. Jake was facing criminal charges. But David? David had built something that would last for generations. A legacy of fairness, inclusion, and excellence that proved that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, but building something so extraordinary that it renders all the smallness they try to impose on you irrelevant. Because sometimes, when privileged people forget that greatness has no color or social class, they discover that underestimating someone can be the catalyst that transforms a victim into a leader, a moment of humiliation into a revolution, and an end into an even more powerful beginning. If you also believe that true justice comes through building, not destruction, subscribe to StoryLoom for more stories that prove that dignity always wins over arrogance and that talent always finds its way to the top, no matter how many obstacles are put in its path.